All right, it is March. We're up here today in the mountains on this food plot. You know, the thing that we have to deal with here in the northeast of New Hampshire, especially the mountains of New Hampshire, and what probably a lot of food plotters are dealing with in the northeast and the far south and the far west, is poor soils. Poor soils are tough to deal with when you want to plant food plots, but you can still manage to plant food plots and feed your deer with poor soils. You just have to be a little more strategic and have a little more patience than you would if you maybe lived in the Midwest and had really rich, high-quality soils. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that we do to have successful food plots in areas with poor soils. As you can see, there are plenty of these everywhere around. We have low pH, super rocky soil, so rocky to the point that we can't even use a drill or it's really even hard to use a tiller. So it's a challenge, but we've been doing it for a long time. We're successful at it, and you can do it too. I think one of the most important things to do is to get a soil test and try to get your pH up as quickly as possible. Really, the game for poor soil food plotting is to try to build your soil, and the first step of building your soil is to get that pH up. Get a soil test. A lot of times in the northeast and the south and the west, soils are very acidic. I've had plots that are in the 4.5 to 5.5 range. That's pretty standard. You want to bring those plots up to 6.5, almost up to 7, or up to 7 if you can. So from 6.5 to 7, as close to neutral as possible. It takes time for this to happen. So you want to get your soil test. You want to use the recommended dosage of lime, the application of lime. Don't skimp on this. It's extremely important. Do it at the beginning, get it done, and it's going to pay off in the long term for your food plot. The other thing that you can do to get that reaction in the soil quicker and make the nutrients in the soil available to the plant to uptake quicker is to use a product like Deer Grow, which is essentially a liquid calcium. So those start acting immediately and immediately make the nutrients in the soil, the existing nutrients or fertilizer, available to the plant to be used right away. With lime, it takes a long time. It can take up for 6 months, a year and a half for lime to fully take effect. A product like that will work almost immediately. So we use that a lot. The other benefit of that is a lot of these areas of poor soils are tough to get to. It's tough to get a lime truck in. So we're using a lot of that Deer Grow product or liquid calcium, and it's really working for us. The second thing is build your soil, and keep this in mind. You never want to have bare dirt if you can help it, other than maybe when you're tilling and planting, but you don't want to have extended periods of time where dirt is exposed. When you have that, you're losing the fine particles of the soil. You're losing nutrients out of the soil, and soil erosion is very bad for food plots. Instead of losing the soil, you want to build the soil. So you build that by always having something actively growing during the growing months on this plot, or on a plot. You can see here, this is a plot that we had some trouble with last year. It was very wet. We had a failed brassica planting because it was so wet. I think we also had a bug problem, but we made sure we came in and seeded it with clover and with rye, and you can see it's coming up right now. We have green rye coming back. That's building the soil. It's acting as a cover crop, and the clover's doing the same thing. So you always want to be building the soil. Rye is a great thing. Clover is a great thing to build soil as well. In the spring, buckwheat is great, but you always just want to be adding organic matter to that soil and always be building it and have it covered. That's critical. You don't have 6 feet of topsoil like you may have in Iowa. We don't have essentially any topsoil. We're down at rocks within a couple inches in gravel, so make sure to build the soil. The last thing is be realistic with your expectations. It takes time. As long as you have something green on that food plot, it's going to be attractive and you're going to be feeding deer. As that plot progresses, you build the soil, you build the pH, it's going to get better. You're going to have higher yields and attract more deer and feed more deer. But also, stick with crops that are easy to grow. We talked about great soil builders. Those great soil builders are also great food plot crops. We stick with cereal grains, particularly rye and wheat. Super cold tolerant. They'll grow in poor soils. We also use a lot of clovers. They're pretty easy to grow. Frost seed. They're a little less tolerant of lower pHs, but they'll still grow. And the last one is brassicas. Brassicas will grow in the back of your truck bed. That's why we love Frigid Forage, big and beastie. It's one of our favorite things to plant. So if you stick with the species that are going to grow easiest in the poorest soils, you're going to have the most success. If you're going to try to go and plant corn in terrible soil, you're not going to have any success. So you're going to waste your money and your time. You get very frustrated quickly. Whereas if you're planting something and you're setting yourself up for success with a planting that will do well in poor soils, you're going to have a great food plot and your expectations are going to be met. So those are the things that I would recommend from my experiences planting and growing food plots in areas of the country with poor soils. It can be done. You just have to be patient and you have to be realistic.